U.S. President Donald Trump has rattled Washington and suddenly startled world leaders with his unpredictability in his administration's first 100 days. Former U.S. Undersecretary of State Nicholas Burns says it has been a very rocky start for the least experienced president in American history. Well, Vice President for Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute, Danielle Plekta, believes the 100-day mark doesn't give an indication for future successes. While campaigning on putting America first, Trump vowed to shake the rust off America's foreign policy. He also vowed to drain the swamp. But as he nears the 100-day mark, Trump faces a myriad of challenges.
This is a very difficult international agenda that President Trump is facing. It's going to require a full effort by the United States to play our role in the world, and the world is looking for American leadership. They're not seeing that consistent leadership from President Trump at this time.
The North Koreans have advanced their missile program and their nuclear weapons program to a very, very alarming state. There's total consensus about this. And they have in Pyongyang a leader that we frankly are not sure is making rational decisions. And the right way to go about this is to leverage the Chinese, because the Chinese have all the power over Pyongyang. So that has been the approach of the president, and I think it is actually a wise approach.
Now, with barely a week left of Trump's first 100 days in office, let's get a sense of the good, suddenly the bad, and suddenly the ugly in his first 100. John Terrett now joins us in New York with an update. John, welcome to the show. Now, of course, it appears that Trump is set to end his first 100 days with a historically low approval rating. So far, his presidency seems to have been plagued with more controversies, certainly, than wins. What do you make of his report card so far?
Well, you know what, Oche, it all rather depends on who you talk to, whether you talk to a Republican like the president or a Democrat like President Obama was. And if you talk to Republicans, they'll say, look, this is an active president. He hasn't stopped working since he came to power just under 100 days ago. He has apparently, according to the White House, signed 32 executive orders, or will have done by the time we get to Friday. They will also point to a big drop in border crossings, particularly on the southern border. They'll, of course, point to a big increase in the number of Americans back in work, a huge step up in first quarter corporate profits here in the United States, a stock market that has literally gone through the roof, up 2,000 points since the election back on the 8th of November. And they will also point to the appointment of Neil Gorsuch as the Supreme Court Justice to replace Antonin Scalia. And actually, for any president, appointing a Supreme Court Justice is the single biggest part of their legacy that they can achieve. Now, on the other hand, not surprisingly, the Democrats would disagree with all of that, and the New York Times, which certainly leans towards the left, has said today that this first 100 days is the worst ever in U.S. presidential history. The Democrats will say, look, where's that wall that you kept banging on about on the campaign trail? No sign of that, or funding for it. What about health care reform? You said that you would have a complete reform of health care on day one in office, and we still have Obamacare going on, and there's no sign of anything to replace it yet from the Republican Party. And they'll also say, on top of all that, you've scared the living daylights out of us regarding saber rattling with North Korea and sending 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles into Syria. So, Oche, it rather depends which side of the political divide you're on, I think.
Well, John, up next is his tax reform plan, which he's unveiling, of course, just now. Of course, President Trump called for a slash in corporate taxes by about 15% this week. Is this going to be positive for business? And certainly, will it get past Congress at this stage?
Yes, I think it is going to be positive for business. And you have to remember, this whole country is basically run like a business, even under the Democrats. And we've just in the last hour had confirmation from the White House. It's a 15% top corporate rate of tax now, down from 35%. 35% top rate for individuals. I noticed that they're eliminating most of the tax breaks for individuals in order to pay for some of this. But look, I think this is what the markets have been waiting for. We've had a 2,000+ point run up. The Dow is back over 21,000 right now. It's refusing steadfastly to go down, and the reason is that there is optimism within the business community for just this day. They've been waiting for these big tax cuts for US businesses. And when you add those in with the personal simplification for the tax code, which is now going on, and the ongoing reducing of regulation in all sorts of American life, then I think that we're going to see an even bigger run-up in the stock markets, particularly the Dow, than we have seen up till this point. Of course, I could be wrong, but I suspect that's what's going to happen. And yes, he will get it through the House and the Senate. The Republicans hold the House and the Senate, although they are appealing to Democrats right now, saying, we hope you will work with us on this. So there's clearly a little bit of doubt in their mind, but I think they'll get it through.
Right. Now, possible government shutdown does, however, if Congress doesn't approve that spending bill. Now, what are you anticipating will happen?
You know, Oche, every single year we go through this in the United States. And the reason is that the government is only funded up to a certain point. It then requires congressional approval. So what's going on at the moment is that the spending bill is being put together. They call it on Capitol Hill the appropriations bill, but that's just a fancy name. It's all the spending plans all mixed in together. And it has to be reconciled between the House and the Senate and then sent to the President for signing before Friday, which is the 28th. If not, then the government here will close down. But the thing is, we've had this before. And the last famous occasion was for 16 days back in 2013. I remember living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and all federal employees had a 16-day unpaid holiday. The park services were closed down. You couldn't go into the parks and that kind of thing. But it all gets resolved in the end. Now, the funding issues now are the wall, women's health issues, military spending, and Obamacare subsidies. That's what they're fighting over right now. But I think one of three things is going to happen. Either the White House will back down and remove the desire for funding of the wall, at least for now, and we'll get a clean bill that will be signed by Friday, or the Democrats will back down, which I certainly think is very unlikely, or most likely, and we've seen this before, they'll come to some kind of compromise that will fund the government between now and probably this coming October. So we'll have like a 6-month extension.
Well, we'll definitely be watching. Many thanks, John, for those insights. John Terrett joining us there in New York City.